And welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show. Glad you are aboard today. And, of course, one of the key topics of conversation is the terrorism at the mall in Kenya. Joining us now is our friend, former federal prosecutor, New York Times bestselling author, Andy McCarthy. Hello, sir.
Steve, how are you?
I'm all right. Little scary thinking about looking at what happened in Kenya and talking about soft targets and the call by Al-Qaeda to unleash terror here in the United States. But I think it all cuts to an aspect of what you wrote about at National Review, I believe, and that is when it comes to Syria, for instance, this administration, Barack Obama, changed a policy where we are forbidden as a nation to give arms or supply arms to terrorists. And in order to aid the so-called rebels in Syria, Obama has changed that policy.
Yeah, he really has. And, the conversation, Steve, is in the context of this federal law that specifically relates to distributing munitions or weaponry to hostile foreign countries. My argument is that the American prescription against arming terrorists is actually much broader than that and includes material support to terrorism, which, almost everybody who's gotten prosecuted for terrorism offenses since around 1996 has been charged with material support to terrorism. It's the backbone of our counterterrorism prosecution matrix, and really the Obama administration has compromised it, and they've unfortunately had help on Capitol Hill from both sides of the aisle.
I mean, and we do that in an effort to help the Syria. I mean, boy, that Syrian issue seems to me to be the least significant of, if I can name the top 5 issues concerning America right now, that would be at the bottom if it would even make the top 5. Unfortunately, it's still up there as a possibility. And again, it's Al-Qaeda that we will be helping. It's Al-Qaeda, or an offshoot of Al-Qaeda, Al-Shabaab, that you know more about than I do, that took to the mall in Kenya, that separated the Muslims from the non-Muslims, let the Muslims go, actually asked the people to name the mother of the Prophet Muhammad if they couldn't. Men, women, and children were gunned down in cold blood with AK-47s. It's kind of like another day at the office.
Yeah, Steve, it really... I must say it hit me in almost a personal way. I guess I would say a personal way, because I was in Nairobi after the 1998 embassy bombing. I saw the devastation there when we were interviewing witnesses to testify at the trial of the Al-Qaeda bad guys who blew up the embassy there and the one in Tanzania as well. And the fact of the matter is, we couldn't have investigated that case but for the fact that Kenya, unlike Syria, is a very important American anti-terrorism ally, or at least has been up until this point. This is why Al-Qaeda has these kinds of operations there and has had them going back from quite some time. And they have destabilized. It's not just Kenya, it's Ethiopia. It's all along the eastern part of Africa.
And yeah, absolutely. And, whether it's Al-Qaeda or not, look at the influence. Look what happened in Pakistan. I mean, I think Christians are, 4% of the population? Look at how many Christians died at the bombing of that church over the weekend. Yes,
and if you read the New York Times account, before you got to the point of any discussion of who might have done it, they couldn't wait to tell you that, there was an Islamic organization that was helping out with the relief effort for the people who had been killed, and that 2 Muslim police had been killed, and that there had been, it wasn't just Christians, it was also Shiite Muslim minorities who were dealing with this violence. So you're set up for this narrative that really this doesn't have anything to do with Islam. Really, this could have happened to anyone, and it's just violent extremists. And then, somewhere around paragraph 37, you get to the point where these happen to be Sunni violent extremists who follow an Al-Qaeda ideology that's a lot more mainstream in that part of the world than we'd like to think.
We're talking Andy McCarthy here on the Steve Malzberg Show. I could start asking you questions about Al-Shabaab and the fact that 3 Americans might have been involved, and this wouldn't be the first time, and we know they recruit We know in an area of Minnesota, it's a problem in the Muslim community where al-Shabaab recruits and young Muslim men, black men, leave and go to Somalia for training. But I just feel like right now, we're not waving the white flag. With a white flag being waved, but we are waving the white flag on every aspect. This administration has just decimated us in our fight on terror, whether it's telling the terrorists we're not going to stick your head underwater anymore if we get you, or what CARE has done with the FBI, what Obama has done now in aiding Al-Qaeda in Syria. I mean, it's just beyond my comprehension, to be honest with you.
Well, that's exactly it, though, Steve. It is a white flag. But in many ways, it's a flag of confusion more than anything else. Our counterterrorism strategy to be effective requires moral clarity about where we stand vis-a-vis the terrorists. And if you've created a situation where you have, Sunni Shiite or Sunni Islamic supremacists who are members, say, of Shabab, who are committing terrorism in Kenya, but if they can get to the border of Syria and cross over, they can be our allies rather than our enemies, then you've got utter moral confusion. And if you got people on Capitol Hill, including Republicans, saying, look, we think it's real important to arm the Free Syrian Army, even though it's rife with al-Qaeda elements and even though it systematically incorporates al-Qaeda in its operations. And we know that some guns will go to the bad guys, but that's a risk worth running. Then we've lost the clarity that was really the backbone of our counterterrorism approach.
Yeah, and it's very, very frightening. I want to ask you about CARE. We had an interview with one of their people scheduled for the show on Friday, and they postponed or they canceled. Not surprising to me. I'm surprised they even agreed in the first place. But they put out a list of Islamophobic, if you will, and they made up that term, Islamophobic organizations, and people like Rush Limbaugh, the Washington Times, the National Review, all made that list. And I just laugh at this unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation trial, calling the kettle black, if you will.
Yeah, I'm really disappointed, Steve, because I didn't make it this year.
Well, I'm sure it's most of your writings that they're talking about.
Well, I get a fleeting mention as a friend of Frank Gaffney's. I'm surprised not as a friend of yours, but I think I'm just going to have to try harder this year.
Yeah, well, maybe that's what you have to do. And Andy, finally, the man who was single-handedly responsible for the Benghazi attack, the filmmaker Nicola is getting out of jail. So right. I guess if the Muslim world were to react negatively, if the Muslim world were to demand that he gets put back in jail and maybe they, God forbid, hit our embassy or something, I guess Obama should send him back to jail, right? Because you don't want to incite the Muslim world. Yeah,
exactly. Well, he went into jail the last time, Steve, ostensibly on a violation of his supervised release conditions. So I guess if they make his supervised release conditions stringent enough, they'll always have some reason or another to toss him back in there.
Just crazy stuff. All right, Andy, as always, thank you, my friend. Appreciate it. Okay, Andy McCarthy, ladies and gentlemen. Spring Fever is the latest bestseller. It's out in paperback. The Myth of Islamic Democracy, and he's just he should have been first on that list. My goodness, by CARE. Interestingly enough, you know who was not only not on that list, but was on another list put out by CARE, and this was called the Best List inductees. Well, Senator Dick Durbin and the Democratic members of the House Homeland Security Committee and Governor Chris Christie. Why am I not surprised? Why am I not surprised? Chris Christie refused to take a stand on the Ground Zero Mosque. Chris Christie has lambasted anybody who dare criticize Islam and talk about radical ties to Islam. He's put a judge in place in New Jersey who once said after the Fort Dick Six got arrested, a case that Chris Christie helped to prosecute as a federal attorney. And this then lawyer said of the Fort Dick Six, it has nothing to do with Islamic terrorism. They should take Islamic out of it. That has nothing to do with what happened here. And this is the man Chris Christie put in as a judge So I'm not surprised that Chris Christie gets an award from CARE. That should be a badge of dishonor. And I haven't heard anybody talk about it but me, so I'm doing it here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Want to weigh in? 855-777-9660, 855-777-9660 on the Steve Malzberg Show on Newsmax TV and radio.
The Steve Malzberg Show.